So we're going to get started again in a couple of minutes. So if you want to grab yourselves a drink, pop to the loo, if you want to clear your plates. And Sarah, who's going to be leading this session, has prepared some handouts so you can start to pass those around your tables too.
Hi everybody, we're going to start the afternoon seminars in about 6 minutes. If you're a yellow sticker, you need to go to the walker room for the first seminar on by Safe Spaces. If you're a green sticker, stay here because we're going to learn about dementia-friendly church. So if you've got a yellow sticker on, you need to go to the walker room. It's going to start in about 6 minutes. If you've got a green sticker, stay in here. If you're pink or blue, you can sit where you like.
Shall we make a start? So, I'm Sarah Thorpe. I'm the dementia-friendly church enabler in our diocese, and I'm glad that we've got some time to look together at dementia and safeguarding and risk management. We've already covered a lot today, haven't we? If you're like me, you know, there's just a lot to absorb from this morning, and so many connections that are helpful and stuff I want to go on digesting. What I want to say, just by way of reassurance, is that there's a handout for this afternoon, for this session. I hope you've got that in front of you. It'll guide you through, so that they're on every table. Do make sure they're passed round. And I hope that reassures you that after lunch, if you're feeling you've already had quite a lot to absorb, this is just a pointer to come back to. And if you do nothing else, just remember that the Dementia Friendly Church Network is part of our diocese, just like the safeguarding team is part of our diocese. So there are connections that can be made over time. So just one or two ground rules just for our time together. First of all, saying we can take time out if needed. I know that was said right at the beginning of the day, and that's important for this focus as it has been throughout the morning. So it's the Jubilee room which gives you quiet space. And if you need to listen to your own heart, please just take time for that, because it'll be important. And all I would ask is that you take time at some point to talk to somebody you trust about what's touched you deeply, because it matters, it'll be important. Our other ground rules, we may find people have got different experiences and opinions. We believe it's possible to live well with dementia. That's a big statement, and it's founded on our Christian hope. So George Rook, who lives in Shropshire and lives with dementia, talks about living as well as I can with dementia. And we all have better days and worse days. But we believe it's possible to live well with dementia. And we start where we are, and we don't have to be experts. I loved it at the end of Jo's morning when she said, I don't know all the answers. I thought that's just really good to hear, because I think that's true for all of us when we're in deep waters. And maybe the most important thing is we work as a team. None of us individually has to go it alone and know all the answers. And we're willing to get involved and to learn together. So our Dementia Friendly Church's logo talks about becoming Dementia Friendly Church, and maybe that word becoming is the most important one. It's we're learning together. So we're family, and we're joining the dots a bit. We've joined the dots this morning between the trauma and some of the work of our safeguarding team, our parishes, our church family. And now we're just joining into the picture, adding in our Dementia Friendly Churches network and people living with dementia, their carers, their family, their neighbours. And dementia's part of every community, and so of course it's part of our church community. And maybe the most important thing we're doing is naming and facing it together. So, you know, historic stigma, and as a society, we're doing more now about naming dementia. And it's so strong if we as churches can be at the heart of that, because as maybe intellectual connections are being made less readily, how important that we can support people in making heart and soul connections. And also, dementia is one of the most feared conditions in our society. And if we, as people who believe that perfect love casts out fear, can be part of the conversation, give trusted space to name dementia and to journey together, that's absolutely at the heart of our Christian witness. So, in the room today, we will have different experiences of dementia. And as a Dementia-Friendly Churches network, we often come back to this picture of head and heart, facts and feelings. And this morning, I wonder what mix you were engaged with. You know, some of the head level of understanding, a bit more about theories and 5 principles. And a heart level. I loved the way Jo spoke, because I could hear conversations I've had with people that were kind of feeding into what she was saying. And as we focus on dementia together, for each of us it'll be a different mix about, whether we're thinking, well, I don't know much about that, I want some facts and information, or whether we've got particular people who are close to our hearts in earth, in heaven, but people who journey with us. And we bring the whole of ourselves into this space. And sometimes it means slowing it down a bit to give time for those connections. So, just to start by disclosing my own hand on that, my dad died in 2017, and for 10 years before that he lived with dementia. So as a family we didn't know much about it when he was first diagnosed, and our only commitment was we'll learn and we'll lean in together. And as that happened for us as a family, in my home church, which is just down the road in Shifnal, I found I was noticing people who were beginning to fall off the radar a bit, because patterns that had worked well for them over the years just weren't quite working anymore. So we, a few of us, started a conversation, and we started a monthly forget-me-not group for people affected by dementia. And we had our 12th birthday when we met a couple of days ago. That group is, of course, very close to my heart. And something about that, doing what we can, we meet once a month because that's what we can do. It might be lovely to meet fortnightly or weekly, but with the group of volunteers coming together, we can meet once a month. And I'm a great believer in doing what you can positively. And as Jo was saying, knowing the boundaries, but doing what we can positively. And then about 10 or 11 years ago, I became the Dementia-Friendly Church enabler for the diocese. And for me, it's really strong that this diocese across our network has been naming and facing dementia together for more than a decade. That's really strong. So for each of us, it'll be different. And I just want to give 2 minutes just for everyone, just to share with at least one neighbour what mix of head and heart, facts and feelings it is for you, just so you're present as we focus on dementia. So just a couple of minutes. I won't ask for feedback, but just name what the mix is for you. Listen to your own heart. I'm sure those conversations could helpfully go on. So let's come back together. That may be the heart of it, and continuing with those conversations at some time today, later today or in the future, may be really important. We've all got different experiences, and there's so much to bring from that. We're just next going to spend just a minute or two at the head level, just with some key messages about dementia. We sometimes spend an hour in our network on these 4 broken sentences, but if we just look at them together briefly, just to give us all a bedrock of a level playing field on this. So first of all, dementia is caused by, and the blank there, can you see how to fill that one? Diseases of the brain. So an umbrella term covering a range of brain diseases. You may have heard of Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, slightly less common, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal lobe dementia. In fact, there are more than 100 different brain diseases under that umbrella term. So dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. And then, next, dementia is not just about losing your memory. So that's one part of our brain, but other parts that deal with planning and organizing, that deal with perception of objects, that deal with language, mood and behavior. So it's not just about memory loss. And then number 3, meet the whole person, not just the dementia. So everyone is an individual, fearfully and wonderfully made. And Professor Tom Kitwood, the person who was really strong in the 20th century on leading our understanding of dementia, said, when you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. It's great wisdom. I love it was worth being a professor for that sort of grounded wisdom. And then finally, blank, help us to keep in step as dementia progresses. Thank you. So we can adapt our responses to meet people where they are. We used to talk in my family with a bit of a wry smile about learning new dance steps together. My dad was never a good dancer, so that was always quite fun just to think of that. But we can adapt our responses. So, in the Dementia Friendly Churches Network, we often focus on the small adjustments that we can make that can make a real difference for staying in step with people through advancing dementia. And whether or not your church is recognised as a dementia-friendly church, whether or not you know people affected by dementia, these sorts of adjustments we'll all be making all the time individually and in our churches. So it's maybe just good to notice that we're not just doing that out of Christian kindness. That's a good reason to do it, but we are required by law to make those changes. So there's under the human rights legislation, there's freedom of religion and freedom to worship, and discrimination, disability discrimination legislation says that we have to make reasonable adjustments. It's worth remembering that that's legally required. And there are so many ways, as I say, that we make adjustments. So some of those, we may have shorter services, we may use more sensory involvement. I've got some memory boxes, some objects which may make more connections than a whole tumble of words as dementia advances. We take home communion to people. We make adjustments to the physical environment. For many people, maybe chairs with arms or whatever that can make a real difference at a particular stage. So we're used to making reasonable adjustments. And some of what we're going to look at for the rest of this session involves case studies. We did some collaborative working between the Dementia Friendly Churches Network and the safeguarding team last year. And this was a way of, I'm smiling, case studies is such a head-level way of approaching it, isn't it? These are people we've encountered across our church network, just anonymised, to say, well, what happens in this sort of situation? So we're going to look at them together, and again, just so you know, I've put the case studies in the handout. When, at the end of this session, there's a handout for you with some of the bullet points of the responses to those, so you don't need to take lots of notes. That's there for you, but we'll give you those at the end of the session. And the key bit for us is about not needing to know all the answers, but needing to know when it's right to talk to somebody else and expand the team. So when Neil Spiring came and talked to our Dementia Friendly Churches Network, I remember him talking about the uh-oh moment, which is when I feel, kind of in deep water and I'm not quite sure where to go on this. And just that's a good moment to think, is that a moment when there's a risk of significant harm and I should be talking to my parish safeguarding officer, or you should now, those of you who are parish safeguarding officers, you might be involved in the conversation at that stage. I'm just going to give you a minute or two, just so I'm not talking solidly, just to look at those case studies on page 4 of the handout. Just have a look at those. Let's give ourselves perhaps 3 minutes for this, and just see if those are sort of situations you recognise. And if you've got any thoughts you want to discuss with a neighbour, do. But let's just give ourselves 3 minutes just taking in those case studies. Those people. Again, I'm sure those conversations could go on, but thank you for engaging with the people who are talked about in those situations. And maybe the first of those, let's just come on to the next slide if I can, but the first of those with Kim, most familiar perhaps, and just making some adjustments. So for Kim, it might be She might sit in the choir stalls rather than processing, and it may be that a bit of sensitive support in helping to find the music is going to make a real difference at that stage. And then it's how you offer that support, isn't it? I love the words from somebody in our diocese living with dementia who said, "I don't want to be pitied, I want to be understood." So I wonder how you're just giving that support. And of course, dementia is a progressive disease, so patterns will change over time. It's not anybody's fault that a pattern that worked well in the past isn't working well now. So we've got to be ready to journey with someone. There may be more changes to come. And then when we go on to Lily, and there's a little bit more worry there. We're getting into the other people tutting because of the swear words coming out. And the bit I've noticed and learned from the safeguarding team that has helped me there is here there is a risk of offence, but not a risk of harm. Just that difference. So when people are offended, then the reasonable adjustment is just a bit of awareness about Lily can't help this, isn't intending offence, if that's the case. And again, every individual case, I'm making assumptions there. You might know more details. We're looking at the individual. So then you're sharing minimal information with other people on a need-to-know basis, but just helping them to navigate what this stage for Lily. And then we get on to Joe, and we've got more alarm bells ringing here, because there's a tipping point when him using the phone and with the noise, that can get in the way of other people worshipping. So if there isn't a sound on the phone, then it may be that a challenge isn't needed. If there is a sound, it may be appropriate to ask Joe to turn off the sound. And we may need to remind him next time he comes to church to do that, because we don't know, but will he remember next time that's how things are in church? So some of those situations that I guess some of us will have experienced that are familiar and that we're navigating, but just getting into slightly deeper water. And when it's when we move beyond the risk of giving offence to the risk of harm that we're into the safeguarding territory. And so onto page 5 of the handout, and I've just put there some of the safeguarding things that the headlines I've found helpful as we get into the deeper water. And let's just start then by recognizing that we're looking for we're noticing if there are allegations or disclosures or information or an indication that someone may be at significant risk of harm. So that includes abuse and neglect, but it goes wider than that. And in my experience with people affected by dementia, it's people are getting stretched thin and thinner. And sometimes that stretch is, causing real issues. Alzheimer's Society website is helpful for reminding us that there's an increased risk, both for the person with dementia and also for their carer, or their partner, husband, wife, who at some invisible moment becomes their carer. So increased risk just to be aware of. And whenever there are issues of power and vulnerability, we're thinking safeguarding, aren't we? That's, that's to watch out for. And sometimes, given the complexity of human relationships, it can be very stark. And someone was telling me recently about a situation where a woman had been abused by her husband over the years, and he got dementia, and as his dementia advanced, she began to abuse him as powers shifted. So that's absolutely the kind of deepest water. And all I know there is that intervention is clearly essential, intervention support. That's one extreme, and there are so many variants, but I think power and vulnerability, it's important to notice. And we've got the 6 safeguarding principles, which I was glad to come across, because they're things that we sort of know. Even that one at first of the principles, empowerment, I was really interested that Joe talked about that as one of the principles in being trauma-informed. So again, we're not trying to do a takeover bid, we're trying to support somebody in their own life. So those principles and protection, again, power and vulnerability coming in there. And with these principles, we haven't got to be the experts, but it's helpful to have awareness of them, isn't it? And similarly, the 5 principles of capacity, again, assessing whether someone's got capacity, that's for the professionals, but without needing to assess, it's perhaps helpful sometimes to notice if there's a bit of an awareness, maybe there's a concern about capacity here. So those principles are helpful. And let's look at our next person, Mary, that's over on page 6. And that last principle, the least restrictive option. So Mary coming to this singing group at church and realising she's got dementia, well, maybe she needs to come with a carer. Now that's making assumptions about one size fits all. So, and remembering there are early and middle stages before late stages of dementia. So working with Mary, possibly with her family, just working out. In the example that I know from our network, the person living with dementia could absolutely drive themselves to the singing group on a good day, on a less good day, their partner would drive them, and on a bad day, they wouldn't come at all. But actually, that was something to work out together. We don't just assume this person's got dementia, so it's not appropriate for them to come by themselves. We open up the conversation, and we find out, we work with those appropriate boundaries together. So then we're moving into the area of risk management. And I think it was really helpful. I found Sam Rushton's picture that she shared earlier this morning about St. Michael, a really helpful picture. And there are times in the dementia-friendly churches network, in our engagement with people with dementia, where it's less of a battleground, but more things are vulnerable here, and we're all feeling the stretch of it. So that's when maybe, you know, there's a different picture that we need to go forwards. So the bit about we're noticing concerns, it's about non-judgmental teamwork. And a phrase I often use, you know, it's an important time just to expand the team. And that's what we know very much in a safeguarding area. And that's true as we journey through the deep waters of dementia too. So again, let's look at another example, because for me it kind of starts with the people and the individual situations we notice. And then we're seeing where we go from there. So this situation, Jaden and Zoe, and I'll give you just a moment to read that rather than reading it together. So patterns changing for Jaden and Zoe, and I'm noticing their frontotemporal dementia. Again, we don't need to be medics, but may be helpful to know that part of the brain is the part that controls inhibitions, so the bit about maybe some of those shifting a bit as patterns are changing. And for me, this is definitely an uh-oh moment where things are just getting deeper water. And sharing a conversation with the parish safeguarding officer may be the appropriate next thing. I haven't got to know the answers myself, and we can draw on the parish safeguarding officer and the safeguarding team. And we may find that in this situation, it's a risk management plan that is helpful, and it's really good to have an opportunity to talk about that as a tool that is really helpful for us. So it's an uh-oh moment, and I'm filling in the safeguarding concern form, and I like it that form, I'm just talking about what I know. I'm talking about those things, just sharing the story. I'm not judging, trying to, point any fingers. I'm just sharing what I know. So then, it may be that a risk management plan is helpful. And again, you may be more used to risk management in terms of planning events, that when we're planning this event, these are the risks and this is what we're doing to reduce risks. This is an individual risk management plan, and the format is just simply saying that's the nature of the risk and this is the action that helps to reduce it. And who's taking that, and what about reviewing? So again, I don't know, but it might be Jaden's getting more tactile as the dementia advances, so the action is, it might be appropriate for 2 volunteers to support him when he comes to a church event. And by whom, well, that might be appropriate to share with all the volunteers. And we're going to look at this again in 3 months, 6 months, because patterns may change. But we're involving both Jaden, if that's appropriate, and Zoe in the conversation. And the other bit about he's getting agitated. And again, are we getting near to a tipping point where he's going to need to be supported by her? I don't know, but that's a conversation to have. So again, we don't need to know all the answers, but we know it's a moment to have a wider team of us working out together. And the only bit I really want you to take away is that risk management plan is a good tool in your armory about this is the situation and these are helpful responses at this stage. I hope that makes sense. So the final case study is slightly deeper water, and Mikhail and Anya, and again, let me just give you a couple of minutes to read that, and then we'll just reflect on that together. So definitely some concerns there. We're filling in a safeguarding concern form, and we're opening up the conversation, a risk management conversation. And that bit for me, we know things are at full stretch and you don't want to put more pressure on them. You know, this is a tough situation. And the bit for me is kind of finding my voice in the right way. I was trying to think, how might I phrase it to Anya? And I'm kind of learning, just trying to find the words that are the right way of saying that. And you might have grappled with this, or, you know, it's all of us trying to work out. So Anya, I care about your safety as well as about Michael's, and it feels important to have a conversation with Philip, our safeguarding officer, just to see how things are for you. I don't know, but finding your own voice about how you're engaging in that situation. And again, the important bit is I'm not having to do it alone. Thank God for our safeguarding team and that moment about where we open up the conversations. And I know whenever I've needed to have a conversation with our parish safeguarding officer or with the Lichfield safeguarding team, I've always felt a sense of relief and release, because it's that moment when I don't have to know all the answers myself. We're working properly as a team. So that's got to be helpful. So we've got into deeper waters there, but when we're in deeper waters, we absolutely don't navigate alone, and we're here for one another. So there are resources for you here, and the case studies and what we've been looking at today is there on the Diocesan website. There's a blog which shares the resources, and there's even a video of Neil and Peter just giving us some really helpful input focused on dementia. So that's helpful resources for us all. And if there's one message to take away from this session this afternoon, it's when you're in deep water with dementia, you're not required to go it alone. If there's concerns about significant risk of harm, then talk to your parish safeguarding officer, involve others, involve the diocesan safeguarding team as appropriate. And there's the Dementia Friendly Churches network. So again, we've got a network. I'm here to have conversations on the dementia side, and we journey together. So I'm going to just finish then with a little bit more on the Dementia Friendly Churches network. And just to say, some of you will know lots about our network, some of you will be less familiar with it. But our strategy has been grown grassroots up. It's about embarking on dementia, naming dementia together, so that none of us is facing it alone. And my word, that's powerful. Just naming and facing dementia together. And then embedding ways of just hanging around in the zone so that we can have those conversations when they're needed. And we have dementia-friendly church certificates that we use about taking actions on dementia. It's not about the certificates and the logo. It's a way of saying that we hang about together in this zone. And these are the actions we want to take, reasonable actions that we feel we can do, but that help us keep the conversation about dementia live. And I'm delighted to say that Bishop Michael generously signs all of those certificates, saying he is proud to be part of a diocese that takes dementia-friendly church seriously. So again, when we are taking those actions, we are absolutely doing that from the heart of what it means to be church and dementia-friendly church. It's about journeying with one another. And we reach out. So there are community connections. There's lots. I could talk about dementia-friendly schools. There's lots more to share. We're not going to try and do it all now, but we work as a team. So lots to share in terms of the network, but absolutely grassroots up. And then just to share those faces, because I feel some of what we've done today has been more head level about, what's the structures. And we've been into deep waters. A lot of our work across churches is delighting in keeping connections as patterns change. And there are so many ways of doing that. So some of the faces across the diocese that are absolutely at the heart of why we're doing this, the people who are, the connections we're holding as patterns change through advancing dementia. And I've got to say, there's a lovely picture there of Alison with her mum, Norma, talking recently on a Dementia Friendly Churches blog about deep inner peace when she brought her mum into the local church, and the connection that absolutely was made for her mum in that space. In fact, that's been taken up, their story has been taken up by the Church of England blog this week. And it's so strong to know that our churches can hold people in that stage where there's lots of mystery, but maybe well beyond words, but something about sharing worship together that absolutely connects and unites us, takes us to the heart of love. So Alison, actually, let's hear the daughter Alison's voice. She says, well, there's no doubt that having a family member with dementia has meant we've faced some incredibly heartbreaking and challenging moments. There are still moments of joy, and we treasure those moments. Mum was amazing when we were growing up, caring, loving, always putting everyone else before herself and championing her family. I'd give anything to have Mum back as she was, and for that short, joyous time in church, I did. So that moment of connection that is just so powerful, and we're back to the heart level of the love that keeps us going. So we started with head and heart, and I'm just glad to finish with Alison and Norma's experience, taking us to the heart of things. We need the head level, the actions, you know, the changes we can make, the results, the heart level, the process, the connection, the being with one another. That's what it's all about, and Maya Angelou's words go to the heart of that. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And absolutely, that takes us to the heart of things, I think. So, lots we can do, and our dementia-friendly churches, more than 100 churches across the diocese recognised with dementia-friendly church certificates, and all of our churches being places where we are navigating the deep waters of dementia together, but none of us has to go it alone. Shall we just finish with these words of a prayer, which we use often in our Dementia-Friendly Churches network. And we might say these words together, because again, none of us has to go it alone. God of all, bless all our churches as places of welcome and hospitality, places of compassion and safety, places of connection and love for all. Bless us to share small acts of love freely given to one another, so that Christ may be made known in our community. Bless us to walk together as friends, recognizing that God journeys with us as we turn our understanding into action and live with hope in our hearts. Amen. Thank you for looking together at dementia and safeguarding and risk management.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was wonderful. It fits in so well with what we've been learning, isn't it? We're going to have a 10-minute break, and then all the green stickers, in fact, everybody in here, you're going to go then to the walker room to hear from Safe Spaces. After that, we're all going to come back together for the Q&A session, where the afternoon will then end. So we've got one more seminar together as a group, which is in the walker room, which is through the doors into the meeting point and follow the corridor round to the end. But you've got a 10-minute break now. Okay, wonderful.
So I think we might be gathering for our next session, if we can move to where we want to be, where we need to be for the next session. So if you're happy to take a seat where you're going to be for the next session, that'll be great to get ready to get going. Keep an eye on our timing. So if you're ready to find your place, let's get ready to go. I don't know how you're feeling at this stage of the afternoon. We've covered a lot today, haven't we? Just keeping our energies. So we'll just see if the last few people are going to come in and join us, see how the conversations go. If you can find the handout on your table, the dementia safeguarding and risk management, you want one of those in front of you. And I hope you'll be reassured by this, because this is just saying you haven't got to remember it all. This is, you know, if you're making some connections and this is something to come back to, I hope that'll be helpful. We've covered a lot today, haven't we? I found this morning really helpful, and you know, just there's a lot we've engaged in. So, I'm Sarah Thorpe. I'm the Dementia Friendly Church Enabler in our diocese. And we're looking in this session at dementia and safeguarding and risk management. So our network has been going across the diocese for more than 10 years. And we've got a supportive network. It's lovely to see some friends from the network around today, journeying with one another, acknowledging that sometimes we're journeying through deep waters with dementia, just as we are with safeguarding. And maybe that's just the one thing to remember, that none of us has to go it alone, thank God. So just one or two pointers to start us off. And let's just see. Oh, yeah, there we are. Sorry, I've gone one too far. So we can take time out if needed. I know that was said at the beginning of today, and it's important just to reinforce. If something is touching you deeply, it's vital that you give time to that and listen to your own heart. And there's space outside or the Jubilee room for quiet space downstairs. And all I would say is that if you step back, please do make sure you talk to someone you trust about what's touched you deeply, because it'll be important. And we will respect each other's opinions and experiences, and we believe it's possible to live well with dementia. That's our Christian hope. And George Rook, who lives with dementia here in Shropshire, talks about living as well as I can with dementia, better days and worse days. But we believe it is possible to live well with dementia, even through changing patterns. And we start from where we are. We don't have to be experts. And I loved it that at the end of our session this morning, Joe was saying, I don't know all the answers. I thought that's just so helpful to have somebody who's so experienced and acknowledging that. So we journey together, and we're willing to get involved. You hear and we learn together. So I'm Sarah Thorpe, and I'm the Dementia Friendly Church Enabler in our diocese. And we've got a network of more than 100 churches who are recognised with Dementia Friendly Church certificates as taking next actions on dementia. All of our certificates are signed personally by Bishop Michael, who says he's proud to be part of a diocese that takes Dementia Friendly Church seriously. So we journey together, and dementia is part of every community, and it's absolutely then part of our church communities. And we as Christians come with our foundational belief that perfect love casts out fear, that it's the love that endures at the end of the day. Dementia is one of the most feared conditions in our country, and none of us has to go it alone. And there's real life to share as we journey together through dementia. So practicalities, just to say, this handout, as I was saying, is here, so you know you don't have to remember it all. We'll look at this together. And I've also got a handout that I forgot to give out earlier after the first session, but it's for all of us to take away. That's the case studies we're looking at, with some pointers of the way of the approach for those. So those are there for you to take away, and I hope that's all just good resourcing for you. So we have been, let's just come on to our next slide. We're joining the dots. So we've done a lot of joining of the dots this morning and today between our safeguarding team, trauma, what we're experiencing in our parishes. And now we're adding in the kind of purple and pink bits of, as we join the dots, so our dementia-friendly churches network, and the experiences of people living with dementia across our churches and communities, and their carers, their families, their neighbours. And just to kind of give you the headlines, because I know it's that sort of tired time of the afternoon, we've covered a lot today, but we're just looking at some of those key moments where there's a risk of harm. And when our network worked with Neil and with Peter from the safeguarding team last autumn, one of the things that lodged for me was talking about that uh-oh moment where you're just thinking, actually, this is deep water, and I need to, I need some help. And that's absolutely likely to be the safeguarding point where it may well be appropriate to reach out and to work together. So we're recognizing that uh-oh moment where there's a risk of harm. And we're going to look at safeguarding concern forms, at risk management plans, and above all, the message is you don't have to go it alone. The safeguarding team is here, our dementia-friendly churches network are here, and we can journey together. So when we're looking at dementia, I wonder where that touches for you. And let's just come back, what your experiences of dementia are. And it may be that it's a head level. You're coming in thinking, I don't know much about dementia, I want a bit more information. It may be a heart level, absolutely, about individuals who are, on earth or in heaven, but who are close to your heart when we name and face dementia together. So just to disclose my own hand, my dad died in 2017. He'd lived with a diagnosis of dementia for 10 years before that. We didn't know much about dementia as a family when he first was diagnosed. And we just said, well, we're going to lean in together and learn as we go. And with his diagnosis, in my home church just down the road in Shifnal, I began to notice people who were beginning to just fall off the radar. Patterns were changing for them, and patterns that had worked well somehow weren't such a fit. So we, 12 years ago, we started our Forget-Me-Not group. We meet once a month, and in fact, so we celebrated our 12th birthday a couple of days ago. So that group is very close to my heart. And then for about a decade, 10 or 11 years, I've worked as dementia-friendly church enabler in this diocese, and we've journeyed together across many churches, just sharing awareness, knowing that goes a long way, a little bit of understanding, and connecting with one another and with God through the deep waters of dementia. So that's my experience. Maybe let's just have a minute or two, a couple of minutes, just to talk to somebody around you about what mix of head and heart is yours today as we name dementia together. Just a couple of minutes. I won't ask for feedback, but I think it's just good to hear your own head and heart. So those conversations, those connections may be really important. And there may be conversations to pick up after this session. But just recognizing where we are, head and heart, facts and feelings. And I know there will be expertise in this room because of lived experience. And we are all learning together as we journey forwards. So let's go on with something at a head level next about just 4 broken sentences about dementia, because I think that will help us all just to get into the zone together. So let's see if we can do these together. Dementia is caused by blank. Can you see how to complete that sentence from the diseases of the brain? Yeah, so it's an umbrella term. It covers a whole range of brain diseases. Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia are the most common. You may have heard of Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal lobe dementia. In fact, there are more than 100 different diseases, all covered by the umbrella term of dementia. So that's our first sentence. Secondly, dementia is not just about diseases of the brain. So, it's not just about losing your memory. Sorry, I'm at that stage of the afternoon where I'm not quite joining the dots. So, depends which part of the brain and other parts of our brain deal with planning and organising, perception of objects, language, moods and behaviour, different things that may be impacted as dementia advances. And thirdly, meet the whole person, not just the dementia. So it's a person, it's an individual with all their unique story, a child of God. And the more we know about the individual, the better. We're all, each of us, aren't we, fearfully and wonderfully made. And Professor Tom Kitwood, who was wonderful on person-centred care in the last century, he said, when you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. I love that. It takes a professor to help us to be properly grounded. So we journey together with that mystery. And then fourth sentence, blank, help us to keep in step as dementia progresses. Understanding and support. So a bit of understanding, a bit of recognising we can adapt our responses to journey with people. In my family, we talked with a slightly wry smile about learning new dance steps together. My dad was never a dancer, so there was a kind of hidden humour in that. But understanding and support help us to keep in step as dementia progresses. So those 4 sentences that just get us started. And in our dementia-friendly churches network, we often focus on the small adjustments that we can make to stay in step with people through as patterns change. And whether or not we're recognised as a dementia-friendly church, about 100 churches in the diocese are, and yet dementia will be part of all our churches, so we are living this. We're making those changes. And maybe the important thing to say today is we do that out of Christian kindness, we're committed to that, but we're also legally required to do so. So, freedom of religion, freedom to worship is recognised under the Human Rights Act, and disability discrimination legislation requires us to make reasonable adjustments. And we're doing that all the time. So I was beginning to think about some of the changes that we naturally make for people affected by dementia and for others. So it might be we're having some shorter services in the week that aren't marathons to sit through. We might be using more sensory involvement. We might be taking home communion to people when they're no longer able to come and join us with worship in church. And there might be adjustments to the physical environment. I mean, something as straightforward as having some chairs with arms where somebody needs that. Maybe their balance not so good. So we're making those adjustments. And some of what we do as we journey with people is that we're more familiar with, more comfortable with. So we're going to look at some case studies. Just to say about these, we worked with Neil Spiring and the safeguarding team and the Dementia Friendly Churches Network. We worked together last autumn, and these are from the resources that we developed then. So I'm smiling because it's rather a head-level thing to say we're going to look at some case studies. These are people we've encountered in our diocese, kind of anonymised into case studies. But really, I want to say the heart level, it's about journeying with people. So if we look at page 4 on the handout, we've got some examples there of situations we're encountering in our churches. What I'm going to do is just give 3 or 4 minutes for you to read those situations about Kim and Lily and Joe on page 4. Just read them and maybe just talk to a neighbour about whether those are familiar situations or if you've got ideas on how we navigate those. But if I just give you 3 or 4 minutes to look at those, then we'll just reflect on them for a moment together. Just another minute or so. So I wonder if those sorts of situations are ones that kind of feel familiar or variants on them, things that you're maybe encountering and navigating together in our churches. So the first of them, and Kim, the lay reader who's in the choir, and but her balance not so good. And that one, we may be more familiar with that sort of situation. She's struggling a bit to find the right music. And there are natural ways, I think, that we make reasonable adjustments there. So she might be sitting in the choir stalls rather than processing into church. And perhaps sensitively somebody will be supporting her in just helping to find the right place in the music. And the way we do that matters so much, doesn't it? I remember hearing somebody in this diocese saying, somebody living with dementia saying, I don't want to be pitied, I want to be understood. So the way we do that, just supporting somebody, really important. And of course, dementia's a progressive disease, so it's nobody's fault that a pattern that works, or that was working a few months back, is no longer working. And, you know, we've got to be open to journeying together and making the next adjustment that's needed in due course. So that's part of the journeying together. We're making reasonable adjustments. When we move on to Lily, we're into just getting into slightly, it's a little bit more awkward, isn't it? It's kind of moving towards the uh-oh moment where I'm beginning to think, that I remember Neil saying in the training, that's maybe the moment when, we're thinking safeguarding and there's a team of people we can talk to. But her swearing is beginning to get in the way for other people. But the important thing here is that the risk here is of offence, but not of harm. And so the reasonable adjustment here may be explaining to others, Lily isn't intending offence, but can't help it, and just sharing minimal information, the things that people need to know, so that there isn't such an impact on others, and they're able to support her at that point. So I found it helpful talking to Neil about that just recognising, or asking myself, is it a risk of offence or is it a risk of harm? And there's another, the next person that we're looking at, Joe, again, slightly more awkward here, a tipping point where his behaviour can start to interfere with other people. And so if he's using his phone but there isn't a sound with it, well, maybe we're just sensitively letting other people know if they're feeling, distracted. But if he starts to use his phone with sounds, then it's a time when it may be appropriate to ask him to turn off his phone or turn off the sound. And it may be that we may have to remind him that next time he comes, because it may be that he won't remember that that's the way we do things in our church services. So those sorts of adjustments we're making. And it's sort of a continuum, isn't it? But we're noticing the point when it's going beyond a risk of giving somebody offence to a risk of harm when we're in mainstream safeguarding territory. And so the next page, page 5, I've just put there some of the safeguarding principles that I come back to. Is there a significant risk of harm? And I'm just saying there, just reminding myself that there's a risk that includes abuse or neglect, but it goes a lot wider too. So just noticing that there might be situations where it's the advancing of the dementia and perhaps a couple are at full stretch plus and it's going plus. And we're just noticing that it's getting quite difficult. I found it helpful on the Alzheimer's Society website, just that clear recognition that there's an increased risk for people with dementia, and also for their carers who are getting stretched thinner over time. So just recognising that this is important. And whenever there are issues of power and vulnerability, that rings safeguarding bells for us, doesn't it? About just awareness. And sometimes that can take us into, with the power and vulnerability and the complexity of human relationships. It can be very stark sometimes. So I heard recently of a situation where a woman had been abused by her husband over the years, and when he developed dementia, as his dementia advanced, she began to abuse him as the power shifted. So we may be in that deep water and an intervention is absolutely clearly needed there. There may be other situations where it's just getting harder and things that used to work aren't, and we're feeling on thinner ice. So we're starting to look at safeguarding and recognising that uh-oh moment where there's a risk of harm, and recognising that the safeguarding concern form we may need to turn to that. And we'll also then look at the risk management plan that may be another helpful tool. The biggest thing when we're getting into this deeper water, again, it's just getting to first base. We don't have to do it alone. So it's the right time to be talking to those of you who are parish safeguarding officers, and you've got the support of the safeguarding team in the diocese. And I know whenever I've talked to the safeguarding team, that sense of relief for me, because it's that bit of, I haven't got to go it alone, and there's just a sensible conversation, just recognising where we're at and the right next steps. So let's just go forwards with that. I've just lost track of where we're at. Yes, the other safeguarding principles. So these principles that I found were helpful because they're very much the sorts of things I'm noticing, without needing to be a safeguarding expert, but some of the things about empowerment. It's not a takeover bid, supporting somebody. And I loved the way that was overlapped as well with what Joe was saying this morning about being trauma-informed and empowerment, one of the principles there. So, we're in the same territory, and that's very helpful. And other things there that in a safeguarding context, but that protection, that bit about power and vulnerability, and it's helpful, I think, to just name those and come back to those as helpful tools. We haven't got to be experts, but just coming back to those principles, they help to just hold us and keep us, support us through deeper waters. And then also the capacity principles, so the 5 capacity principles, and again, just saying for us here, assessing whether or not someone has capacity, that's for the professionals to do, it's not for us. So we don't need to assess, but it's helpful to notice if we've got concerns about capacity. That just may be helpful in saying, how are things? So those principles, 5 principles of mental capacity, and of course capacity can fluctuate, it may come and go a bit. So just picking up on the last of those, the least restrictive option, making sure that we're not being unduly restrictive. And again, let's look at another individual, another situation, and Mary's situation. So she's coming to a singing group, and this is a time when it's helpful to think about proportionality and, the least restrictive option. So people have recently realised she's got a diagnosis of dementia, and they suddenly think, oh no, she shouldn't be coming to the group alone. She should bring a carer with her. Well, the important thing there is to work with Mary, maybe with others in her family, if that's appropriate, about, don't assume one size fits all. And of course, there's early stages of dementia before there's middle and late stages. So the time I came across this example, it was a stage where for the person with the diagnosis of dementia, they were absolutely able to drive themselves to the group if it was a good day. On a less good day, their partner would drive them, and they knew that. And on a day that wasn't a good day at all, they wouldn't come to the group. But we're opening up that conversation, and we're just working things out, having that conversation, and not just assuming the only response is you've got to have a carer with you. We're opening up the conversation. So we're beginning to move into the area of risk management and thinking about what's an appropriate, a proportionate response to manage risk. And you might be more used to doing that when there are, for an event, we'd very naturally do a risk management assessment, wouldn't we? These things to manage risks. This is slightly different because it's for an individual noticing the situation, noticing the concerns, and as a team, not judging, but just coming together to work out the way forwards. Often in the Dementia Friendly Churches Network, we talk about expanding the team, noticing the moment when it's sensible to do that and involve others. So let's look at Jaden and Zoe's situation, and that may just help us then to colour in what's the sort of way we might encounter that. And again, let me just, that's over the page on page 6. Can I just give you a couple of minutes to have a read of that? So that situation, and it's an uh-oh moment. It's becoming a little bit more difficult, and I'm noticing frontotemporal dementia. I know that's the bit of I'm no medic, but that's the bit of the brain that deals with inhibitions. So there may be some changes around that, and what's the way forwards? Well, it's a moment to have a word with the parish safeguarding officer, to talk to Jaden and Zoe and involve your parish safeguarding officer. And the risk management plan can be so helpful. It's just saying, this is the situation and this is the best way of managing it. And for all of these case studies at the end of this session, there's a little booklet to take away with our responses on those. So those will be there for you to go away with. And maybe again, I know we've had a lot that we've taken in today already. We don't need to know all the answers, but we do need to know the right point to be involving others. So the risk management plan, and let's just see with this situation. So the safeguarding concern form, and again, it's important to me, that's just sharing what I know. I'm not trying to point the finger at anyone, but I'm just sharing the situation as I know it. And I'm just doing that sensibly, steadily. And then I'm going on, and our conversation may then be about a risk management plan, about what's going to be appropriate. And that simple format, what's the risk, what's the best way of responding to it, and by whom. So here it might be Jaden's getting more tactile as the dementia advances, so it's appropriate for 2 volunteers to support when we're with him at church. And by whom, well, that's something that all volunteers need to be aware of. And we're going to look again in 3 months, 6 months, or when patterns change, just to see if that's still, if there are other actions that are needed, or we can do it, we can look again more quickly if patterns change. So just that tool of a risk management plan, so we're sharing appropriately, these are the steps that just help us to support in this stage. And for me, it's some of this is about finding my own voice properly in that situation. I'm just thinking, how would I say that? How would we open that up? And just doing that so that we're working as a team, we're expanding the team and working together. And then final case study, Michael and Anya, is there on page 7 of the handout. And again, this is slightly deeper water, a bit more challenging, and things clearly aren't okay here. Let's just take a couple of minutes to look at that situation. So this situation that's not easy, and clearly one where we're into the safeguarding zone and where we need to just open that up, and we need to complete a safeguarding concern form, and we might be looking at risk management. And I'm just trying to think about how would I be saying that, because I'm really aware of that bit. They're at full stretch. Things are at full stretch, and you're not wanting to put extra pressure. So just finding my own voice about how I approach that. And I don't know if it would be, Anya, I'm thinking about your safety as well as Michael's, and it feels really an important point to have a conversation with Philip, our parish safeguarding officer, at this point. So just ways of opening things up and expanding the team. And again, you're just finding your own voice in a way that is natural and appropriate there. And where would things go? Well, there'd be a conversation which I think would be about what triggers the frustration, the violence, the hitting out, are the particular patterns. But you're working with a team. Your parish safeguarding officer is working with the Diocesan safeguarding officers as needed, and you're getting a basis for understanding how best to support and be alongside Michael and Anya, and sharing that as appropriate with others. So that's the deeper water. And the great strength is about not having to go it alone, but about working that out together. So different bits of those situations may be things that have resonances for you, and I hope that just outlining them together is helpful for just seeing how we're approaching things, about moving beyond a risk of offence to a risk of harm. And there are, as I say, there's a handout with just the responses to those situations that I'll give to you, and it's kind of knowing there's somewhere there are people to turn to, and you're not having to navigate this alone. And this is all based on the work we did last autumn with the safeguarding team and the Dementia Friendly Churches Network. So there's a blog there with the resources there for you. There's Neil's really helpful input and these case studies that we've shared, the forms, and so something there to turn to, and that's set out in your handout. So that sense about some of those situations we're navigating more comfortably and more regularly, and we're noticing that uh-oh moment when we expand the team and work with others. And I then just want to finish with a little bit more on the Dementia Friendly Churches Network. Some of you very much aware of our network, others maybe less so. And again, just letting you know a little bit more about our network. So we have, we've been working as a network across the diocese for 12 years now. And we're glad to keep connections as a network. with an invitation to network meetings with some newsletters where we're sharing expertise and experiences. And our strategic plan has been grown very much from the grassroots upwards. So embarking, naming and facing dementia together, it can be so significant and so helpful just to be journeying together, naming dementia together. And again, resources for this that we share, because none of us has to start with a blank sheet of paper. And then embedding the bits that help to raise awareness and support churches in taking natural next steps. And we have our dementia-friendly church certificates, so about 100 churches in the diocese with those certificates. And we're always just setting out 3 actions, the next steps, no step too small, but the next things we're going to do as a church community in the next 12 months, helping us just to positively to be naming dementia together. And all of those are signed personally by Bishop Michael, who says he's proud to be part of a diocese that takes dementia-friendly church seriously. So absolutely with support from the heart of the diocese. And extending then, reaching out where we're making community connections. There's lots I could share on dementia-friendly schools. Again, there's much more to share, but today I just want you to know that there are resources and there are connections, and none of us has to go it alone. So that's some of that strategic framework. That's more the head level bit of our network, and there's some training coming up, some opportunities in the coming weeks that are on the second little handout that's available for you at the end of this session. So always ways of connecting and just coming together and taking next steps. That's the head level, but let's just come back now to the heart level, and let's just see some of the faces from around our network. It's all about people. It's about staying in step as patterns change. And there's lots that so many ways that we do that. It's about individuals. It's not about a network, but it's helping us to journey together. I loved it that Jo was saying this morning, wasn't she, about walking alongside one another. And that for me feels just so helpful. And in those faces, I think it's right today to just pick out in the middle there's Alison with her mum Norma from Pattingham Church. And I was really glad to see today that a story that was shared first of all in that church community about Alison taking her mum to the local church next to where her mum's in residential care, and the really profound impact of that visit to the church. Alison talked about deep inner peace. Her mum, who is more non-verbal now, but coming through the door of the church, that sense of her agitation falling away because something, heart and soul, was connecting so deeply for her. And Alison just saying recognising heart and soul, what can be offered by our churches in that stage when we're way beyond words. So their experience has actually been picked up just this week by the Church of England blog. And I want to just quote from Alison, because I think it's more important to hear her words than mine as she continues to journey alongside Norma. She says, whilst there's no doubt that having a family member with dementia has meant we've faced some incredibly heartbreaking and challenging moments, there are still moments of joy, and we treasure those moments. Mum was amazing when we were growing up, caring, loving, always putting everyone else before herself and championing her family. I'd give anything to have my mum back as she was. And for that short, joyous time in church, I did. So amazing, the gift that we can share together of those moments of connection that are absolutely go to the heart of things. So the people that, it's about individuals, about journeying together as patterns change. And I'm going to just come back then to head and heart where we started. We need both of those. So the head level that does help us with the action lists if you want to get your head around a dementia-friendly church certificate and 3 actions for your church. We share lots of actions. You can have a look at what other churches have signed up to and think, well, that's a natural thing for us. So great to do the head level bit that can help for change, can help to open up conversations, can help to see results. Also, the heart level that's absolutely takes us to the core of things. So that process, that connection, that being with that Alison and Norma knew in that church service in Tettenhall it was, in fact, but that goes just far deeper than words. And I love Maya Angelou's words. I've learnt that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So just taking us to the heart of things. So we've covered a lot, and the main message, whatever else you forget, is that sense of not being alone, I think. The safeguarding team and across our dementia-friendly churches network, there are conversations that are open to you, and we journey together as we get into the deeper waters, and we journey with God. And so I would like to finish with a prayer that we use extensively across our dementia-friendly churches network. It goes across, it's on the back page of the handout, and you may like to join in the words of this prayer. We may be lovely just to share them together and hear one another's voices. God of all, bless all our churches as places of welcome and hospitality, places of compassion and safety, places of connection and love for all. Bless us to share small acts of love freely given to one another so that Christ may be made known in our community. Bless us to walk together as friends, recognizing that God journeys with us as we turn our understanding into action and live with hope in our hearts. Amen. Thank you all for journeying together this afternoon, and I've got the handouts for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. Just say we're going to start our Q&A in about 5 minutes' time. So do stretch your legs, have a quick loo break if you need it. There isn't another coffee break, I'm afraid, at this point. And then we'll be back in here in 5 minutes. Thank you. Oh, yes, sorry, I forgot that. Do you want to say it? There you go.
It's the yellow stickers in here. If you're a yellow sticker and you have not got a asterisk on your sticker, it was because we were giving free books to the first 100 or first PSOs. If you haven't got a sticker, an asterisk, you're now welcome to have a free book because there are some left over. And they're on the welcome desk where you came in this morning. So if you're a yellow sticker and you didn't get a free book this morning, please feel free to go and get one. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we could gather for our penultimate session. No, you can't. You've got to sit at that. Oh, no. Oh, well, don't. Yes. Yes, sit at this end. That's lovely.
Try not to fall off the stage.
Try not to fall off. Okay.
That's Joe's book, and they've got a few copies left on the bookstall. Could you just...
I'll just do that. Yep. Okay. Right, everybody, let's make a start. So if you could just take your seats, that would be super. So this is the question and answer session. We've had quite a number of questions, and I hope we were able to do them justice in the next, not very long, because we've only got about 15 minutes, because we do want to send you on your way rejoicing at 4 o'clock, which is what we promised. I think we promised 4 o'clock. Oh, no, we said 4:30. You've got to stay a bit longer. Marvellous. Yes, if you come and set up there. Right, so we've got about 40 minutes to have some questions before we hand over to Bishop Michael to wrap up. So we've got the questions already, and we have a lovely panel of people who are going to answer the questions. And I've managed to get out of answering any questions. How did I manage that? But what are we going to do to start with is I'm going to invite everybody just to say who they are and what they do, so because you may not have met absolutely everybody.
So hello again, I'm Megan Smith, I'm the Archdeacon of Stoke, but I particularly have been asked to join in the Q&A because I'm on the Safeguarding Oversight Scrutiny panel for the diocese. Do you want me to go into a question, or do you want to do the whole panel first?
I'm Michael, I'm Bishop of Lichfield.
Hi, I'm Mandy McPhee. I'm the National Safeguarding Team Regional Safeguarding Lead for the West Midlands region, and I used to do Neil's job in the Diocese of Hereford.
My name's Neil Smiring. I'm the Diocese Safeguarding Officer, so I head up. My team's waving at me from the back. Really badly behaved. Go and stand in the corner. I head up safeguarding for the Diocese of Lichfield.
I'm Sarah Fullard, and I'm the Safeguarding Training Officer for the Diocese of Lichfield.
And I'm Sue Lord. I'm the DBS Administrator, so I deal with all your general DBS inquiries.
Splendid, turn that one on as well. Splendid. So I'm just going to try and marshal the troops. But let's begin with Megan, who's going to, if you could read out your question and then answer it, that would be splendid.
Well, the first bit, that's easy. But the question, or the first question I've got here is, with so many churches in the diocese being in vacancy, how do you make sure PSOs get the regular supervision that they need? An excellent question. So it's naming a reality. There are a lot of vacancies in the diocese, and we are grappling hard with how we support parishes across the spectrum of all their responsibilities during that time. But I think there is a specific thing of how we support PSOs in vacancy, but also we have been doing a lot of thinking about how we support PSOs in general, because PSOs still need the right support and supervision. Even when you have an incumbent there, some of that the incumbent hopefully is able to give to you, but there may be other needs as well. And the Safeguarding Scrutiny Panel, this is a really live topic that we're talking about at the moment, and one of our priorities for the coming year is to thinking how we can up what we offer. So the bottom line is, hopefully you all know that you can at any point pick up the phone to the safeguarding team, and it's the sort of no query is too small, or even just I'm uncomfortable at this, I don't know what to do. They are very happy to speak to you and to ring them. But there's also a degree in supervision of not just how do we deal with what's in front of us, but How do we help develop each other? How do we help people really reflect on what they're involved in and the challenges that they face? And what we're hoping to do, we've had a great joy this year in the last couple of months that the size of the safeguarding team in the diocese is increasing. And once the newer members of the team fully have their sort of feet under the table, as it were, which is probably now, we begin to look at actually, can part of their role be not just responding to queries that come in, but actually thinking, how can we build better relationships with our PSOs, and how can we ensure that supervision is happening? So there's no concrete plan at the moment yet, so if you have your own thoughts, we would be delighted to hear from you how you think this can best happen. But we're looking at whether it's possible. There might be a model within deaneries where there's a sort of lead PSO for a deanery who can sort of be particularly upskilled and can help support their colleagues. Obviously, we'd then need to find someone within the deanery who has had capacity, to be willingness to be trained for that sort of role. But also so that for your a group of deaneries, there might be a named person from the safeguarding team who was your core link for those sort of ongoing, that you can build more of a relationship with, rather than it just being whoever was the person who was available to answer that phone that day. So not to deal with the urgent queries, and the casework, that would all be dealt with as it is now. But to look at who is it that you could build more of a relationship with. So that's what our thinking is at the moment. As I say, it's definitely on the agenda as we've been writing the plan for the coming year or so. But do speak to us and let us know if there's particular things that you're feeling actually would really help support you in those situations. And particularly if you're in vacancy, please do also know that you can pick up the phone to your rural dean, and you can also pick up the phone to your archdeacon.
Thanks, Megan. And that's a really good prompt to say, because archdeacons, of course, we talked earlier on about the importance of teamwork. And I know how important it is that the safeguarding team and the archdeacons and the registrar who's sitting at the back all work together. And I just saw Nick, Archdeacon Nick. Would you like to stand up and say hello? So for those of you who haven't met Nick yet, Nick is the new Archdeacon of Salop. Yes, she got it right. Who's not that long in post, so you may not have met him yet, so he couldn't be with us for the beginning of today, but do catch him as you're going out and say hello and just introduce yourself, because then you get to know people. Because it's all about relationship, isn't it? It's about knowing people that you can just pick up the phone and say hi to. Brilliant, thank you. So, Bishop Michael.
Thank you. So, somebody has asked this question, if I just read it out. Many LGBTQ plus people have experienced spiritual abuse by their churches. They have responded by the flight or fight response. How can the diocese help our churches to be safe places where these vulnerable and at times marginalised Christians can feel welcome and be allowed to worship and contribute? So a really big question. I don't know who asked it, but I'm very grateful to whoever raised that issue. I mean, just to set the scene, my expectation, which I think is shared by everybody in this diocese who's reflected about it, whatever their theological or ethical views on questions about same-sex relationships, is that everybody should be welcome in our churches, and that's a non-negotiable really, whatever their background or sexual orientation or identity. We know, of course, it won't have escaped your notice, I'm sure, that there's some pretty vigorous debates going on in the Church of England and indeed within our diocese about a whole range of issues around same-sex relationships, living in love and faith, the prayers of love and faith, clergy in same-sex marriages, the meaning of marriage, a whole lot of issues. What saddens me, I'm very glad that those debates are going on, and it'd be nice if they came to an end at some point, but at the moment I'm glad that they're going on, and it's important to talk about them. But what saddens me is when, if they are conducted in such a way that people's lives are damaged as a result of that, because we're not just talking about issues, we are talking about people. So in this question that says many people have experienced abuse by their churches, they've responded by flight or fight, I do recognise the reality of pain that lies behind that for some. And I would love us to be in the place where that was not an issue for us, where everybody, whatever their background, as I said, did feel welcomed. Given that that does happen, at the moment, there are two bits of support that we make available in the diocese. One is the provision of an LGBTQ plus chaplaincy, which is the work particularly of Matt Edwards, a reader in our diocese who sacrificially gives of his time, his commitment and his wisdom to be somebody at the end of an email, the end of a phone call, or indeed to go and visit people who want to talk through their own experience and get some wisdom and support where that's necessary. Alongside Matt, there was for until recently, Matt, it'd be fair to say, comes from the language and the use of labels in this area is always difficult. I think you'll know what I mean if I say he comes from an inclusive or a more liberal position. We did have also on our website pointing people with a more conservative theology to another priest, James Gandon, who has now left the diocese, and we're just looking at what provision we can make so that there is some support for people across the spectrum of views around same-sex relationships. So there's chaplaincy provision, which I hope we will continue and can possibly expand. And there is also I think monthly or something like monthly, maybe 6 weekly, gathering of people called Gathered, which is particularly designed as a meeting for worship to support LGBTQ plus people. I celebrated the Eucharist and preached for that group this year in May, I think. That's a bit of extra support. But what we really need to get to, of course, is the point where we can recognise the range of views, strongly held views across our diocese, but make sure that everybody is welcome.
Thank you very much. Mandy, would you like to reflect on one of your questions from a national perspective?
Yeah, I've got a question here, and it says, is there an outside body which investigates accusations of abuse within the church? And if not, why not? There's a further paragraph saying, I wrote this question yesterday and it has been partly answered today. However, a friend of me told me she didn't feel she could be a PSO because of General Synod's decision. Can I reassure her? Right. In relation to the first question, is there an outside body which investigates accusations of abuse? Yes, there is, and it's called the police or social care. If an accusation comes into the diocesan safeguarding team, it is assessed against a threshold. If it meets a threshold for referral, it is referred through to statutory agencies who will then take the lead on any investigation or exploration. If it doesn't meet a threshold, invariably it is then explored at a diocesan level as to whether any ongoing risk is substantiated. So where accusations, complaints or concerns come to the diocesan safeguarding team, if they meet a threshold for referral, they are referred. And we are accountable if they're not referred and should be referred. So therefore they go off. Quite often they don't meet a threshold, and therefore it comes back within the organisation where there is a robust process for those concerns, accusations to be explored appropriately. There's a very robust process for that, including the level of record checking and scrutiny at a later point. What then falls into play is obviously whether or not that concern then meets a threshold for referral to the Charity Commission. And again, the Charity Commission also scrutinises how we do or don't deal with a particular case. The second part of the question is, can I reassure her in relation to being a PSO? Irrelevant of the direction of travel and the outcome of the new Safeguarding Structures programme, by way of reassurance, there will still be a need to have parish safeguarding officers in parishes, and there will still be a need for safeguarding teams to be based within dioceses. The only difference with independence, if independence does come, and it may do so, is that those safeguarding teams may be line managed and supervised by an independent organisation, but for a parish safeguarding officer, you won't see any difference in terms of accessibility and the kind of work that they will do to support you in church, in parishes, by way of reassurance.
Thanks, Mandy. And I think I would just want to add to that. So internally within the diocese, we obviously have an escalation route. So if you go to Neil or his team and you don't feel that you're getting the right kind of response, that something hasn't been dealt with well, then Neil reports to me. So you can always email me and say, I'm not happy about this, and I will undertake to look into it. If you're not happy with my response, then you can obviously, or indeed you can go to any of these levels, you can always contact Bishop Michael because he has the overarching responsibility for safeguarding within the diocese. You can contact any member of the Bishop's Council because they are the trustees, they are the charity trustees for the Diocesan Board of Finance, and they have a duty also to make sure that your concern is being properly dealt with. And if you're not happy with any of that stuff, you can contact Mandy directly, or any member of the National Safeguarding Team, or, as Mandy's already said, the Charity Commission, or indeed the police, if you're unhappy. There's a very long escalation. I would prefer you to go through that escalation process rather than leap straight to the police, but it is always your right and your responsibility to go and make sure that your concern is being heard. So if you're at any time any worried, you've got all those people to talk to. Is that okay? So, and I've got like 10 years experience of safeguarding at a senior leadership level in the church. I get safeguarding, I understand safeguarding. So do know that if you come to me, I will take your concerns seriously. Neil.
Hello. So I'm taking these questions in no particular order, just which one's on top. So this one's about loan working. So it says, where do we find a standard policy to adopt? And that's from a PSO. So there are some examples of, I wouldn't call them standard policies. I don't think we should ever go down the route of calling things standard, because you will get template suggestion policies, but they're never going to fit in with the way a particular parish works. And the reason for that is that all of our parishes will have slightly different patterns, slightly different flavours. They will operate in slightly different ways and be involved in slightly different activities. So you can't kind of have a complete standard policy. But there are template policies out there. So we have one on the Church of England's national website, which can be accessed through the portal. There's also some guidance in our own diocese safeguarding policy about arrangements for loan working. And Mandy's very kindly tipped me off to the fact that Hereford also have a suggested policy for loan working as well, so that's there. Generally speaking, there are some principles with loan working, which are that whenever you're putting people workers, staff into a risky situation, you will always double up. So an example of that appeared on some of the stuff in Sarah Thorpe's workshop, where there was kind of an example of a little risk assessment on the back, where somebody was going into somebody who had dementia, who had made accusations about money going missing. So in that example, the advice was to double up with staff in order to make sure that there was accountability there, and that could be communicated across to the daughter as and when those situations occurred. Of course, as Sam's just said, that there's nothing to stop somebody going to the police with an issue like that as well. But that might be completely different depending upon how you operate, whether you have, whether you work extensively with people with dementia. Perhaps you're not a dementia-friendly church, and maybe there are other issues. The other thing with lone working is it's about letting somebody, even if you're not going out to a risky situation where you need two people, somebody else still needs to know where you are, so that if you're not back at a particular time, if somebody doesn't hear from you, somebody else will know where you were intending to go, so that they can, if necessary, make contacts with people, and that efforts can be made to locate and make sure that you're safe. So those are kind of the general principles, but do go and take a look at those suggested template policies, but don't use them as if, look at them and bespoke them to your parishes.
Brilliant, thanks Neil. Now, Sarah will not be a stranger to most of you. You will have met her at some point. Even if you haven't met any of the other people on the stage, you will have met Sarah. So you've got a question about training.
Yeah, so someone's wrote, could the diocese develop a training course or Bible study for congregations to both understand trauma and how to support people going through trauma? And I think today shows that we're very committed to spreading that information about trauma-informed churches and trauma-informed care. And this is the start, not the end of a conversation. What we hope from today is that you take back some of this learning and start those conversations locally, because you are the people on ground level in the parishes. In terms of training, I don't believe that would be at diocesan level. I think there's a national conversation to be had, and I am well aware that conversation is ongoing. So the national team in relation to learning and development work with all of the dioceses. We meet regularly, and part of the conversation is, what do parishes want? How can we support them? And trauma-informed, both trauma-informed churches, trauma-informed communication, and all of these themes are part of what is being developed to support parishes. But it is a work in progress, we'll be honest about that. But watch this space is what I'd say on that specific question.
That's brilliant. And while we're on that topic, there are, this is Jo's book, Joanna, this is her book from, which has all of the stuff that I think she spoke about this morning, Grove book. There are a few copies still available at the bookshop, so please do buy something and take it back and share it with your congregation, with your PCC and your clergy. And the recording of this morning's session, by kind permission of Jo, is going to be available on our website afterwards. So you can encourage your friends to go and watch it, and they can also learn from in the same way that we learned this morning. So, so that's brilliant. And huge thank you to you, because you've so opened our eyes to this really important issue. Sue, you've got a question about DBS.
Yep, I've got a question about eligibility. Is who needs a DBS check on our pastoral visiting team? And this is one that comes up regularly for me. We have at the back of the room there, and also available on the diocese website, an eligibility guide. It's a little bit tricky to navigate until you get used to it, so you can always give me a call if you're not sure. But number of roles within the church, people are eligible for a DBS based on their role, and for other people it is based on their activities. So for example, your PCC members are trustees of your charity and therefore are eligible for a DBS. Other people, it will depend on exactly where they're working, what they're doing, and sometimes how often. I will say as well, you can only apply for a DBS for somebody if they are eligible. You can't have a policy that everybody who works in this particular ministry has to have a DBS, because if they're not eligible, it's not legal for us to put that check through. The other thing to say is DBS isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's not a case if you've got one or you haven't. You've got two workforces within DBS. You've got vulnerable adults and children. All children are vulnerable, so everybody under 18 counts. And then within that, there are two levels. You can have it with or without the barred list check. So looking at this specific example of a pastoral visitor, if I read through the guide, I haven't got enough hands to do that. If somebody is visiting someone else in their home and they are working at least once a week or 4 or more days in a 30-day period, they are eligible for an enhanced DBS for the adult workforce without the barred list check. Now that once a week or 4 or more days in a 30-day period, I appreciate can be difficult to predict with pastoral visiting, because you might have somebody who's just come out of hospital and needs a lot of visits, and then you might not do anything for a few weeks. So I work on the what is reasonably likely. What level of commitment are you giving to this role? And if it's reasonably likely that you will meet those criteria, I'd be happy to put you forward for a DBS, enhanced DBS check. On top of that, I mentioned the barred list check, which is like an extra level. If that pastoral visitor is doing any personal care, so that includes taking to the toilet, washing, dressing, or feeding. If they are helping with shopping or money or bills, so even if it's just, can you pick me some milk up when you come over, I'll give you the cash when you get here. Or if you are taking that person to a medical appointment, then that is considered regulated activity, and you would require the barred list check as well. There are similar but not exactly the same requirements for children's work. It is slightly different requirements, but again, it's based on the type of activities you're doing and how frequently you're doing it. So it's just a case of working through the eligibility guide and saying, which of these criteria do I meet, or this person meet, and then choosing the correct level, and then marking that clearly on the form that you send off to your DBS verifier, and giving some examples of it. So you, for the example of the pastoral visitor, you would say, this person is working frequently, and therefore they're eligible without the barred list check. Or you would say, working includes taking to the toilet or includes going to medical appointments. And then the verifier knows that you also need the barred list check. So it's just communicating exactly how you meet those criteria so that we get the right level for the right person. Okay.
Thank you very much. And of course, it's probably worth emphasising at this point that, of course, the DBS check is just a moment-in-time check.
Yes.
And it is not the be-all and end-all of making the whole process safe, is it? So it's doing a DBS check, yes, but it's in the context of, is this process safe? Have we done safe recruitment? Have we done all of these extra things as well?
Because some people who are not eligible for a DBS check, but they still need to do the rest of the safer recruitment process, they might need to do safeguarding training. Yeah. Just because you're not eligible for a DBS doesn't mean you're off the hook completely.
Yeah, bless you, thank you. So we've probably got time for maybe 2, maybe 3 more questions. Who would like to volunteer to do another one? Are we?
I'll hold it here and I'll move it there.
Megan, do you have another one that you want to address, or go for it?
I guess I volunteered because a couple of the questions that have been donated to me were things that I've already been chatting about, so picked up myself during the day. So one of them is, when most of our churches are largely run by volunteers, how do we encourage ownership of some of the attitudes and responsibilities discussed today, e.g. being a trauma-informed church? And the other related one of how much of what has been talked about is the role of the PSO rather than pastoral staff. I guess starting with that second one really is, I see it as it's a combined responsibility. I think one of the key roles of the PSO is that you've got a keen focus on this, and because of that role of the PSO, it's always like you're more likely to be in a position where you can always be the champion for safeguarding as well within your parish, even though safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. but some people need sort of more of a nudge to remind them of that at times. Obviously, when you're not in vacancy, you'll be working alongside incumbents who also have a very key responsibility for safeguarding and the culture, building the culture within the church. And when you are in vacancy, your church wardens legally do step into that responsibility. So I think it's about making this in how, and you will know how things sort of work best in your communities and your churches, is how does this become a topic of conversation? So you might like to, because I presume that safeguarding is a standing item on all PCC agendas, because it should be. If it isn't, go away from this and tell them you've been told it has to be. But you might want to do a report back of a little of what you've learnt today and what's been talked about, and then ask the PCC, well, what are their thoughts about how you take that forward? You might want to suggest people get together and actually watch the videos of Joe's talk together. You might ask for a meeting with your incumbent and ask how we're going to progress this. I think this is the realisation of needing to be trauma-informed churches is sort of something that's rising, but it's sort of still on that, just getting there, and eventually we will get there, and it will become something that becomes innate within us and is at the forefront of each other's brains. So at the moment, I think it's about finding creative spaces and taking opportunities for sort of holding the flag and going, we need to address this, we need to be conscious of it, and then trying to spread out this isn't just about me, let's work. You won't get everyone on board at once, but how can you just get a few more people on board and start spreading that? And we've certainly had a conversation today about, this has been fantastic, all the input today as an introduction, but actually, how do we continue to support you as you think through this more and think more about how you actually use this to build the culture within your church? So that's something else that will be on our agenda, is to think how we can support you in that, and everyone else in your church in that development going forward.
Thanks, Megan. We've probably got time for 2 more quick answers. So maybe Mandy, one from Mandy and one from Neil.
I've got a couple of questions which are broadly similar to each other. Why does the Church of England not simply adopt and support and positively embrace the county, local authority-based, independent, multi-agency safeguarding structures? As long as the church is seen as marking its own homework, there will be cynicism about how open the safeguarding process really is. And there's another one which is pretty similar. How can we instill faith in a system that has persistently got it so wrong and still insists on marking its own homework? Firstly, all diocesan safeguarding teams across the country work hand in hand with their own local authority safeguarding structures, such as MAPA in relation to offenders in worship, and the multi-agency MASH, multi-agency safeguarding hubs, and indeed have daily conversations with the local authority designated officer, who is a person that sits within children's services and has statutory responsibility for making decisions about whether somebody can occupy a position of trust. That is very much a day-to-day conversation. So we do work hand in hand. We also, across the whole country, engage in Section 11 audits, which is where a safeguarding board reaches out and says, tell us what your safeguarding arrangements are, and we do respond and take part of those audits, as do loads of other charitable organisations and other organisations. What I would also say is that we're now almost 2 years into an independent audit programme, INEEC. Lichfield's is in 2028. It's a company from Northern Ireland which is headed up by Sir Jim Gamble, or whatever his name is, I think, who's working his way around the country with a team of people that goes into a diocese and a cathedral and leaves no stone unturned. and he's pretty robust and ruthless in terms of expressing his opinion. That is the second audit programme that the Church of England have embarked on. The previous one was the Sky audit programme, and again Lichfield was part of that. In between those two audit programmes, you also had independent reviewers in that conducted the past case review. So there's an awful lot of programmes where we're not marking our own homework, and we're all being subjected to rather in-depth, independent perspectives. You are more than welcome to access INEEC's website and read every single audit that has been published. And in fact, the NST had the joyous occasion of being audited ourselves in July, and our report is due out soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy. And I have to say, in a very amazing feat of poor timing, so I've just been audited in my previous diocese, and now I'm waiting for the next audit. So I don't think I got it right there somehow, but anyway. But Neil will be doing all the hard work on preparing for the audit, so that's all right. Neil, a last question from you, maybe.
Yeah. So I've got a question that probably doesn't lend itself to a quick answer, but I'll do my best I can because it's an extremely multifaceted issue. So how can we support people we know who are in a domestically abusive home but do not acknowledge it to anyone? So, I mean, I could go off in several directions on this one. It's something we get these types of cases a lot. The truth is that some of the time, if somebody's not acknowledging an abusive relationship and there is no risk to life or physical harm, it is about going to be spending time with that person, talking to them, reflecting with them, helping them to think through their situation, and as a consenting adult able to make their decisions, who is able to make an unwise decision, helping them to come to that conclusion in their own time. Now, that kind of fits into the trauma-informed practice stuff we were looking at this morning, when you think it through. But there is another side to this, which is when people are at risk of harm, where there is a crime being committed, where not acting is going to result in them coming to injury or coming into a situation, perhaps a sexual assault. Any of those types of things, we have a duty, it falls into what we call duty of candour. So although the person might not wish us to report something, and it might be difficult for us to turn around and say, actually, I have to action this now. The truth is, in situations like that, the correct course of action is to call the police. But there's a whole other game that goes on with domestic abuse in terms of the way people think about themselves, the situation they're in, where they are in that relationship. Sometimes it's about they want to exit that relationship, in which case we might then be turning to organisations such as the Pathway Project or Women's Aid or any of the other charities that work with people in these situations. It's multifaceted and it is extremely complicated in terms of the dynamics, and I know Mandy will have experienced that as well. If in doubt, with all of these things, as we say continuously on the safeguarding training, please, please, please pick up the phone and give us a call, okay? I'd rather spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour talking through a situation and getting to a point where we have a safe resolution and a plan to move forward, than for any of you to sit out there and think, oh, I'm really unsure about this. Please just call us. We haven't got a line as catchy as 0800 1111, I'm afraid, but go onto the diocese website, phone the telephone number. We're option free. We kind of make sure somebody is always there to answer the phone, so please do call us.
Thank you, Neil. And with the additions to your new team, I don't know if you wanted to introduce your new team, who may not have met everybody.
Absolutely. I better introduce the whole of them because you might not have met some of them. So sitting at the back, right there, and I'm getting...
Stand.
So Kim, could you stand up? Hello, Kim, on the left. You're looking a little different today. On my left. Anyway, it's fine because I'm going to have to go through both. So Kim Hodgkins, who I'd imagine a lot of you may have spoken to, some of you will never have met her. Kim is absolutely fantastic, has worked for the church a very, very long time in terms of safeguarding. Really, really useful to myself and Pete because honestly, there's a question about the church structures, church traditions, all of those sorts of things. Kim's got the immediate answer. And, you know, really, myself and Pete couldn't really do our job effectively without her. So Kim is what we call a diocese safeguarding assistant, so she assists myself and Pete. So that's the first one. Second, I got Peter Kurd, who is the one that hasn't just sat down. Peter is our assistant diocese safeguarding officer. So he's effectively, if you think of it as the assistant team manager. So if I go out and I get ill and I can't come into work or I'm on leave, Peter takes up that role and makes sure that sort of things keep moving on. Peter, like myself, is a qualified social worker with many, many years of experience across children's and adults' work. Including safeguarding, has an awful lot of knowledge, brilliant to have on board. And then we have 3 new staff who I'm going to ask to stand up in turn. So we've got Maria, Emma, and we got Laura as well, who I don't think is here today because she's on leave. But Maria and Laura just come on board, so we've recruited 3 new staff, 2 posts equivalent, because two of them are part-time. But amongst them we have 2 very experienced police officers who bring with them that whole knowledge base around how police forces work. They bring a network with them, which is already proving massively useful. And they bring that kind of understanding of the justice system into play as well, which social workers, we tend to be more about supporting people in terms of care planning and stuff like that. Whereas police officers tend to be more about supporting people through survivorship, supporting people through the criminal justice systems. They know how investigations work, all of those things. And both myself and Pete have worked in what we call multi-agency safeguarding hubs before, and it kind of brings that mix, which is really, really helpful for the diocese. And then not here today is Laura. Laura is a probation officer by background and brings that knowledge base of, I could be getting Emma and Laura mixed up here. Yeah, did I get it the right way round? So brings that knowledge base of managing offenders into play. Now, bearing in mind that one of the big tasks we have a responsibility for as a diocese safeguarding team is managing offenders inside of our church, offenders with particular categories of offences. Bringing that knowledge base, that skill base in managing risk is massively useful to us as a team. Lastly, you know her already. We have Sarah Fallard here, who is absolutely fantastic. Sarah, as well as being a very, very skilled trainer, is also a qualified social worker and has done casework in the past. So when she's doing the training with you, she's not just coming at it from the perspective as a trainer, she's coming at it from a perspective as somebody who's done casework herself in a church setting, or be it a different church, but brings that real world experience into it. So when she's talking in training, she's coming at it from that perspective, not just in terms of the training material.
Thanks, Neil. That's brilliant. And they are fantastic colleagues to work with. So that's all for now. We're going to just say a huge thank you to our panel. And then I'm going to hand over to Bishop Michael, who's going to close us with a reflection and prayer. So thank you to the panel.
Thank you very much. What a great team. I'm not going to talk for very long, and probably I won't carry on talking until the rain stops, so I'm sorry about that. I did just want to finish briefly with 3 very short reflections and to pray for God's blessing on us all. A reflection about all of us together, a reflection about angels, and a reflection about following due process. All of us together, first of all. As I was listening this morning to Joe talk about trauma, I thought, and no doubt you felt the same too, I've been through some significant traumas. I've been through a particularly significant trauma myself in the last 2 years. No doubt you have at some point, or someone you know has. This is something that affects us all. As I was listening to Sarah talk about dementia, I thought it's very likely that dementia will come my way or the way of somebody very close and dear to me. This will be part of my story too. All of us at any time can become vulnerable through circumstance at a particular time in some season of our life, and that means that all of us are potential victims and we hope survivors. So safeguarding is not just about a group of people over there, it's about all of us in that sense, and it's also about all of us in that it's all of our responsibility. I have a particular responsibility which I share with my brother and sister bishops and senior staff, an overall responsibility for safeguarding in the diocese. We have a fantastic professional team to carry us forward with safeguarding in the diocese. There's all of you as frontline parish safeguarding officers, as someone said, giving a nudge to everybody else. But ultimately, it's not just the people in this room, it's everybody. It's that safeguarding affects the whole body of Christ and is the work of the whole body of Christ. So we're all in this together. That's just the first thing I wanted to say. Secondly, I wanted to go back to Sam's amazing image of angels, or St. Michael, of angels this morning. And Sam, I think you talked about at least 2 roles of the angel, the holding the sword, the combative, the advocate, and the scales, the justice role, if you like, and the wings being the role of protection. And of course, another role of the angels in Christian tradition is that the angels are the ones who lead us to our heavenly home, the ones who lead us into paradise, the ones who take us to where we really belong. And that takes its origin, that image of the angels ready to welcome us at the end of the journey, takes its origin from Luke's version of what Jesus says about Lazarus, the poor man who sat outside the table and the dogs licked his sores while the rich man feasted at his table. And then the angels carry him to the bosom of Abraham. And there you have, in that picture of Lazarus, in safety, in comfort, in honour, Lazarus, who had been the most marginal member of that community, really thrown out on the street, despised, abused, attacked by the dogs, all that kind of stuff. He is the one who really counts. And that's the kind of community that we should be as a church, the one where the least, the most despised, the most vulnerable is absolutely central. And at the end of our lives, when the angels come to lead us home, we'll find that is the case. So be ready for that. But let's try and build a church that looks a bit like that now. And then following due process with great care and attention. This has been a wonderful day. And I know that all of you do follow due process with care and attention. And we've had a lot of great organisation today. Let me just tell you a very simple story of what happens when you don't do that. And it's a rather embarrassing story because it happened to me about an hour ago. I sort of heard somebody, Liz I guess, say, the second group will meet in the room over there. I think the Warner room? Warner Room. Anyway, that's the bit I didn't hear. So I was a few minutes late moving to that group, and I knew it was over there somewhere, so I went in the first room I could find, which I think was called the South Water Room, and was greeted by a rather surprised group of people. And they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I think I'm here for safeguarding." And they said, "Oh, well, that's interesting, because we're an antenatal class here." So I leave you with that image of what happens if you don't follow due process with care and attention. Enough of such nonsense. Can I invite you, if you're able, to stand as we pray for God's blessing. We pray for God's blessing on our churches, on our diocese, on the Church of England. Pray for God's blessing on those who are the poor, the vulnerable, victims and survivors, those experiencing abuse. And we pray for God's blessing on each one of us. May the angels of God watch over you, guard you, and keep you in safety. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you hugely to all who've organised this, particularly Liz, whose brainchild this was. Thank you, Liz. And do travel safely to your homes.